All right, boys, let's talk about the 4% rule. So the 4% rule is basically, let's say you have $3 million in the S&P 500, whether it's VOO or a different fund that tracks it. You basically just have a bunch of money in the S&P 500. Let's just say $3 million. Obviously, I get that's unrealistic, but let's just say in this example, $3 million. If you take away 4% of $3 million, that's around 120K. So you sell 4% every single year and pay yourself 120K a year salary. It's a lot of money for a lot of people, and 120K a year before taxes can get you a long way. So you take away 4%, you still have that, and let's just say the S&P 500 averages 8% throughout the whole history that you own it. So you take off 4% every single year to pay yourself that 120K a year salary. You still have that other 4% in there to compound and grow over time. You also have the automatic dividend reinvestment setting turned on so that it's compounding, and you take away that 4% to pay yourself that money while the rest of your money still sits in that fund and grows and compounds over time. That's basically the whole thing about the 4% rule. And in theory, if you use this rule, you'll be able to pay yourself, a salary or a small income while you still have money that's always going to be growing. So you should, in theory, you're never going to take more than you get, basically. So in a way, it's kind of like an infinite money glitch in theory. Now, of course, there's certain years where the S&P 500 isn't going to perform like it should, or, there's certain circumstances where it might not work. You might break even. You might even take out a little bit more than you gain. But in theory, if the S&P 500 stays around 8%, then you should always take out less than you have. And that's kind of the whole theory of it. So this is something a lot of people can use in order to pay themselves some money while still having their funds grow over time without sacrificing that compound interest. And this is a really interesting theory because it has the benefit, it basically gives you the best of both worlds. You get to take out some of your returns, you get some money to help yourself out, pay yourself an income, but you also get to keep money in there to grow and compound. So your fund isn't getting affected that much. That's the theory of the 4% rule. It's something that I've always been very interested in. But like I said, in order to pay yourself a substantial salary, you're going to need a lot of money in there, which obviously, I'm not going to have $3 million in my fund anytime soon. I might not even have that when I retire. So I understand it's completely unrealistic, but that's the 4% rule. What I personally think is a better alternative is just to keep your money in the S&P 500 and Roth IRA. And when you turn 65 and you're able to withdraw that tax-free, then I would recommend doing the 4% rule. The 4% rule really only has longevity when you do it with a tax advantage account, because then you can pay yourself a tax-free income, which is pretty crazy. Or you can just take the money from the dividends and try to live off of that, because hopefully your Roth IRA at that point is going to be high enough where the dividend amount is something, pretty substantial that you're getting paid quarterly or whatever. So that's what I would recommend. Some other options I've been thinking about is I've been looking into SCHD, which is also a mutual fund that has pretty decent growth, but the good thing about SCHD is it pays you a dividend yield, and a consistent safe dividend yield, I think about around 3%, which is pretty good. So a lot of people like SCHD because they can pay themselves a salary basically, but unless that's in a tax advantage account, you're gonna have to pay taxes on that money, which is okay if you're just willing to, and if you do the math to see how much you're gonna have to take that hit for the taxes. But SCHD is also a potential thing I was looking into. But I figured that at our young age, and at the age that most of you guys are in, which is like 20s to 30s, maybe even 40s, it probably makes more sense to just prioritize safety and growth, which is literally what VOO is. So I would say still spam VOO. And then when you're 65, you can reevaluate and reallocate some of that money. Let's say by the time you're 65, you have $3 million in VOO. Maybe you can sell some of it, put it into SCHD to pay yourself an income. Maybe you can keep the rest in VOO, let it grow, and take out 4% every year. So you get an income, plus you get a salary from the 4%. So there's different options you have, But the best thing to do up until retirement is don't try to nitpick and focus too much on hyper optimization. Just focus on growth and safety, which is VOO. So don't, of course you could take more risk and, potentially get more gain, but the VOO is safe, boring, and predictable. It's so predictable. There's literally calculators that predict what your money is going to be like in X amount of years because of how predictable the S&P 500 is. So keep it simple. Spam VOO. S&P 500 is great for growth. And, if you're investing young, you should prioritize safety and growth. And when you retire, when you get that money tax-free, then you can reevaluate where your funds are based on your priorities, based on whether you want to pay yourself an income, based on whether you just want to have a large wad of cash, getting interest. There's multiple different things you can do at that point. But for now, let's keep it simple. Just put all our money into VOO and just trust in the process.